Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our session, Building Diverse and Inclusive Engineering Teams, with our guest speaker, Atif Abbas, Regional Head of Capital Measurement and Analytics within Financial Engineering at Goldman Sachs. This webinar is especially close to my heart as Atif and his team at Goldman Sachs taught me and 30 other students how to code in Python through Code First Girls. In this talk, we will look at issues and approaches for building diverse engineering teams. What are the specific actions or approaches that can be adopted to increase effectiveness in promoting inclusion and encouraging and enforcing diverse hiring, retention, and promotion? Now, before we begin the session, I just wanted to take a minute to introduce eSynergy. We are a technology consultancy delivering business value to our clients across all areas of cloud computing. Every day we challenge the status quo of the consulting landscape by delivering outcomes in a faster, more agile and cost-efficient way. As part of our value-added service, we offer a community engagement program that enables you to build your technical brand awareness, engage directly with diverse technologists and support you on your communities of practice journey. I sit in eSynergy's community team as their community and diversity manager, so please reach out with any further questions. Now, without further ado, let me introduce Atif. Thanks, Atif.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. You, your families, friends are safe and healthy. By profession, I'm a software engineer. In my career, I have developed products and customized software systems for various sectors and industries. For the last few years or many years, I've been working. Where I head up one of the business engineering team in the EMEA region. Throughout my career, I've had privilege to build successful products and systems, but I also had opportunities to build successful technology team, both in the startup and in the corporate environment. In Goldman Sachs, I've led engineering recruitment for my department, and I'm also a member of a graduate recruitment committee in the EMEA region. In today's webinar, I will not be talking to you about technology, but we'll be talking to you about diversity and inclusion and the importance in the technology teams. I and my firm, Goldman Sachs, have been working on this for the last few years in terms of improving diversity and inclusion across our technology teams globally. Today, I will share some of my personal experience as a technology leader, from a technology leader perspective, and also some of the experiences and examples from my company perspective, from Goldman, that we are encouraging in our firm. In recent years, diversity and inclusion has become one of the top agenda pretty much across all sectors, especially in the technology industry, where, in my opinion, problem is more acute. I don't need to share any stats, but the fact is the diversity stats of technology industry across the firms, especially around gender, is not great. For example, it is estimated that the ratio of female staff working in tech role is almost less than 25%, whereas 50% of user community of key technology platform globally are women. Therefore, where I agree at the corporate or executive level, firms, big or small, need to set their diversity and inclusion agenda at a corporate level and provide framework to their employees and managers. But I also believe leadership in the organization across all levels, especially the middle management and leadership layer, plays a critical role. I mean, I've read this quote from an American biographer, Doris Goodwin, which resonates with me. Good leadership requires you to surround yourself with people of diverse perspective who can disagree with you without fear of retaliation. I believe new ideas and innovation comes from diversity of ideas, and diversity of ideas can only come from a diverse team. Therefore, creating a diverse and inclusive team should be at the core of the team culture. which is set by technology leaders in those teams and firms. As a technology leaders, we need collective heroes that work as a team, and as a technology leaders, we need collective heroes that work as a team, and heroes come in all size, gender, and background. So what will it take for us as a technology managers? What can we do in this space? But let's first briefly talk about challenges technology managers or people in position of managing a team face to build a productive tech team. If you ask any tech manager or head of engineering or CTO, they will tell you it's not easy. We face many challenges. Finding the right talent in terms of person who has the right technical capability, right knowledge, experience, problem-solving mindset, and specific technical skills in some cases. Sorry, no, I mean, in addition to that, we face timeline and pressure to deliver, and this is true for both startup and a large corporate firm. And then on top of that, retain our productive engineers. How do we keep them motivated? How do we give them the environment where they can flourish, where they can be productive and creative? I believe technology leaders and team managers need to change their approach, how they recruit, train, and retain their teams, which is diverse and inclusive. In my view, technology managers need to lead and play a proactive role to increase diversity in their teams. Let me share a couple of examples. Let me share one example, which I faced and I worked through. I mean, in the past, when I had a responsibility to extend my team and hire a bunch of technologists, we basically, in a very specific period of time, we had a challenge to hire a lot of people and to do a very important commercial project that we were working on. And then we made a number of hires. And towards the end of when I was concluding my hiring spree, and I noticed that the people that my team has actually hired more recently, they had a very similar background, similar experience, and that made me think about well, although they are the right people for the roles that we've hired, but can we do something more? So I went back to the agency, had a conversation with them, and I asked them that I want to see more. I want to see different CVs, not necessarily from a similar background. And then in that moment, after a few days or a week, I received a CV for a very a female candidate. She basically had a relatively less experience compared to the other candidates. But we decided to basically, so I decided to go ahead, and I basically gave her an informal call. We had a quick chat, and I understood from her background perspective, and my impression from that call, after that call, was that she seems to have a basic technical skills, and she lacks the experience that necessarily we require. But based on that, I still decided to go ahead and give her an opportunity to go through the interview process. And toward the end of the interview process, she went through all the technical interviews. With the rest of the interviewers, we had a debrief. And then we all agreed that yes, she seems to have technical capabilities, and problem-solving skills, but she does lack experience that we are looking for. So collectively, we decided that we would basically take her and give her an opportunity, and then we will put time and effort to invest. And then she turned out, in a few years' time, she turned out to be one of the productive team members in the team, and then her career actually progressed. She moved from a different level. She was promoted to be more senior developer, then started taking a lead in the project, and then she was promoted to be vice president. But I wanted to do a bit more, in my view. But I felt that there's more to be done and more wider. Not just, the problem was not necessarily in the pipeline, but also what can I do to encourage more girls and females to come into STEM or introduce them to programming? Excuse me. So I found about Code for Girls and I decided to work with them. And I've been working with them for the last few years in helping introduce young females into coding and programming. And I feel humbled that I've been able to help some of these girls who had no previous background of programming and are now working as programmers in some of the tech startups or in big companies. One of them, in fact, works in Goldman Sachs as an engineer. Recently, Goldman Sachs is one of the sponsors of Code for Girls program, and we work in partnership with Code for Girls to host and conduct programming classes across our campus. So what are some of the specific things that we can do? So let me share some of the things that, based on my reflection, if you like, best practices or ideas over the period that myself and my firm have actually incorporated in our organization, in our teams. First of all, we must start by acknowledging the fact that often we make decisions based on intuition, right? Whether we like it or not, we do have biases, perhaps hidden biases. I mean, a few years ago in Goldman, our CEO mandated each manager and leader across the firm to go through a training to learn about biases. The training or the lecture was conducted by Mahzareen Banerjee. She's a Harvard professor and an author of a book called Blind Spot, where she talks about hidden biases of good people, where she covers in detail about her study how hidden biases play a part in decision making. So I guess the first thing is to train yourself and learn about biases. Are you aware of unconscious bias? Do you train your team about it? Do you make decisions based on intuition or use logical reasoning and data to make decisions? Secondly would be, what is your long-term strategic view or goal for your team? Are you willing to trade off short-term versus long-term goals? Are you willing to train someone to get long-term benefit by sacrificing your short-term goals? I shared the example with you earlier on where I made a decision to hire someone relatively junior who required training and time, but it paid off. The dividend paid off in the longer term. Let me share another story. A couple of years back, I remember I was talking to one of the graduate students who was taking one of my Code for Girls course, Python course, and she was telling me that about her experience she had while interviewing in one of the firm, big international firm, where during the interview process, an interviewer told her they're not sure if they want to hire her because she would require a lot of technical training and support. So I think that's a key thing that we have to, that perception and that's a mindset we have to basically change and see what is the right call at what time. Sometimes there potentially a raw capability on an individual, and it may require from a manager and a team to take a longer term view and invest time and energy, which could pay a dividend, as I said, and I shared in my example, in the long term. I mean, the other example I would basically, the other example I would share is that when I was managing my my recruitment for my division, one of the things that I noticed that the candidates that are coming in the pipeline were not necessarily very diverse, and a lot to do is more because the agency that we were working with was trying to close the candidates, and also the hiring managers in the department also had pressure to working with the tight deadlines where they wanted to hire people quickly. But one thing what I did was I decided to reach out to all of my female colleagues in my team and in my department, and we basically I stated the problem to them, and I told them that we basically don't have I mean the department would like to increase the diversity candidate in a department. And how can we do that? So we set up this working group of female colleagues, where we discussed about the hiring, where I would go in and share the status of the hiring, how many candidates we've had, and from which background, and also taking the feedback. And I think one of the feedback that the group basically suggested was to, for certain type of candidates, or more specifically diversity candidate, maybe what we should do is have an initial, before we put them through the formal screening, maybe we should have an informal conversation, or hiring manager should have an informal conversation. And also possibly where, in case of diversity candidate, let's say if it's a female candidate, we should have one of our female colleague have a conversation with her, so that at least both the candidate and ourselves have a good understanding about what we're looking, and also what the process would look like. So that kind of helped us and helps the candidate in our experience more more comfortable going through the process and be open about both us and them. So I guess there's more, so that's kind of more in terms of hiring what you can do. And the other thing I think is important to do is accountability. Are you making managers and leaders in your organization accountable for creating diverse and inclusive team? Well, in Goldman Sachs, we have increased hiring manager accountability for interviewing a diverse slate of candidates. And in instances where this has not been possible, hiring manager now needs to provide explanation to the global chief operating officers or divisional approval committee on the reasons why not. So when it comes to hiring, I think the things that you could do, that simple things in my mind can be done, is what technology managers can do is source candidates from a diverse talent pool. Try non-traditional ways to recruit, like leveraging affinity groups within your organization, or frankly outside of your organization. In Goldman Sachs, we do this quite a lot, especially for, and I'm just using an example here, for our entry level. Not only we have informal networking sessions in partnership with affinity groups such as Women in Technology and other affinity groups, but we also conduct training where we help candidates on how should they approach the technical interviews and what skill they need before they apply for an engineering/tech role. Train your interviews. I mean, I gave one example previously. I think how do you need to make sure that the interviews that you have in the team have gone through a training to understand, at least the understanding about the biases, and also what do's and don't should they do in terms of when conducting an interview. And then the other aspect, I would say, format of your interviews. So I think that's another very fundamental way you can improve your process. Screening CVs and candidates, in case if you do online test or a virtual coding test, are they inclusive, right? And I've shared one example where we basically were, before we would start the interview process, we would have an informal conversation to get the expectation and understand, right? In Goldman, we leverage tools like CodePad for more experienced hire and HackerRank for more graduates. Use competency-based structured interviews where all candidates are asked the same question. Score each answer immediately after it's provided using a simple scale, either 1 or 10 or whatever other scale that you can easily use it for a quantitative analysis. Compare the scores of all the interviews candidate, highlight the top candidates basically. So that takes the subjectivity out and then put more objective in terms of selecting and identifying the candidate. I mean, there are tools available in the market like HireView, which are very good in that aspect. The other thing we could do is making sure the interview panel that we are selecting is a diverse. Do we have diversity included in that interview panel? Because that's kind of, to be honest, that's the reflection of you and your team to a candidate who's coming into the process. And then do a collective individual feedback, collect the individual feedback, and don't rush the decision, right? And in Goldman, we basically do, we have a debrief of each post interviews where we collectively discuss based on the, the competency based, also subjectively, or any feedback that would be important and relevant in the hiring decision. The other thing I would say that this is just about hiring the new candidates, but once you've hired a candidate, integrate new hire into the firm, right? Go above and beyond, educate new hire about your company, team, proactively about flexibility. I mean, what sort of flexibility you offer. Or, I mean, in Goldman, we basically have, we even have programs like first 100 days programs for new hire, where allow the new hire and the manager to integrate and help the new hire to integrate to the firm, where you learn about the firm, you learn about the team, you also learn about the expectation, and then what kind of, how can you be more proactive, where hire manager and the HR and the manager proactively reach out to employee and check on their progress and share feedback. And that's informal feedback. We also have buddy and mentorship program to help with their integration, as I mentioned, especially to navigate them and help navigate the firm. You should also think about physical disability. Work proactively with HR to see individual need. For example, adjustment required in a workplace to meet individual need, possible work arrangement. I mean, these are the things consciously a hire manager needs to put into their mind when they're going through the hiring process. It doesn't need to be something that HR needs to go and highlight. But I think as a hiring manager, to be more inclusive, we need to think about these things more upfront. And more specifically, I think during COVID, it's even more important how as a hiring manager, we think and approach. Like, for example, how are we letting people know that we are hiring? Like, what channels are we leveraging? I mean, some of the traditional challenge probably not enough, to be honest. Have a detailed employee recruitment procedure, some of these that I just mentioned, right? Because being in remote, you want to make sure that some of the discussion that you could have with your team and other interviews bilaterally or face-to-face or huddle up, probably in doing it remotely, is forcing you to be more structured. Be realistic in your offer, right? Type of role, expectation of the role, all the benefits and compensation. And also, to be honest, flexibility in my mind is a two-way street. For example, the role that you may have, or the role in shape or form that exists today may look slightly different after the crisis, right? So you need to have that upfront conversation, honest conversation, and then basically prioritize remote working skills, right? So how you do that in Goldman during this crisis, pretty much 98% of the firm was able is working remotely. So those kind of things as a hiring manager, we need to do that. I know in a tech industry, or more specifically tech-oriented role, that's kind of assumed that will be available. But based on what I know, based on some of the friends and the other people that I know who work across different industry, not every industry beyond outside of tech industry is actually really equipped, not just from a technology tech perspective, but also from a culture perspective to promote remote working, or I should say flexible working. So last but not least, but I think that's an important thing, is inclusion. And diversity go in tandem with inclusion. It doesn't stick without inclusion. An inclusive workplace is a welcoming culture where employees are treated with dignity and respect and feel valued. It is essential, therefore, to include people from different backgrounds earlier on in a project or in a product development stage. While it takes longer for diverse teams to gel, but the research has shown that they're more likely to anticipate and respond to the change effectively. For example, Google did a study to find out what makes a cohesive and operative team, and also how hiring managers, or the manager, and then the role that a manager plays in that. They found out that the analysis found out that the effective team performance correlates to the group's average level of emotional intelligence and a high degree of communication between the members of the team. or of any team. In other words, an individual's personality affects team performance. So for example, the clarity of role within the team, interaction of an individual, interaction of an individual with the rest of the team. So those are the key factors that plays into part, right? In Goldman Sachs, teamwork and consensus building is at core. In fact, it's part of one of our of Goldman Sachs business principle. And feedback is one of the core tenets. Feedback is a natural way of talking about inclusion. You want to hear all voices in product development process or in project. Hearing a variety of ideas and concerns will help make products better. Well-being and mental health is another important thing, right? The relationship between employee well-being and engagement is crucial. A healthy and happy employee means a productive and engaged employee. For example, in Goldman Sachs, we have a wide variety of employee assistance program. And we also have training programs for managers about how to be resilient, how to be a resilient manager, and also to a lot of resources to support individual resilience. Working environment, I mentioned briefly earlier on, it's another very important factor to be inclusive, to create that, to promote that inclusive culture. The space in which you work also contributes to the company's diverse and inclusive culture. For example, think about physical disability, wheelchair access entrance, quiet places for coding. As much as the technologies are, enjoy collaboration, they also need time and space, a quiet time and a quiet space for their creativity. And sometimes, whether it's in the office or remotely, any individual religious beliefs that you have, how do you accommodate those in a workplace? In Goldman Sachs, we have initiatives such as Culture of Respect, where a set of learning focusing on awareness and mitigation of all forms of harassment and misconduct in the workplace. Use of language is also very important. For example, gender pronouns. Aim to educate our people. In Goldman, more specifically, we aim to educate our people on gender identity and pronouns use as an effective tool for building an inclusive environment. It offers employees several channels to self-identify their pronouns, should they choose to. To conclude, it's very important to create diversity and inclusion strategy for your company or your team that will meet your business requirements and successfully achieve your objectives. And if we clearly manage and communicate expectation, obtain buy-in and resources, or simply just get your colleagues excited and on board, can all impact the long-term success of your team and of your organization. If you get it right, it could transform how your business collaborates or works. So I invite my fellow technologists and technology leaders who are probably listening to this webinar to become a diversity hero, a diversity champion in their respective organization by playing an active role to create and foster diverse and inclusive environment to build a team of collective and diverse heroes. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any question you have.